Hello Year 3, it's Mrs Aries here. I hope you're all keeping well. Today I'm going to share with you some tips and advice for how to complete one of the maths activities based on length from the Year 3 curriculum board. So let's start. Before I begin to explain the activity, I thought it would be helpful to do a quick recap on what length is as a measurement. So what is length? Length is a term used to identify the size of an object or the distance from one point to another. Length is a measurement, and we measure length in millimetres, centimetres, metres and kilometres. Length is always the longest side of an object. There are many mathematical terms which are linked to length. So let's have a look at some length vocabulary. Here are just a few examples. Short, long, tall, height, measure, distance. Can you think of any more length vocabulary? Why not pause the video and have a quick brainstorm for yourself? Now we need to remind ourselves how we go about measuring length. So how to measure length? When you are measuring the length of an object, you would usually use a ruler with centimetres on, which would sometimes include even smaller units of measure called millimetres. If you were going to measure the distance from one point to another, you would usually use a metre stick equivalent to 100 centimetres, or maybe a tape measure, which allows you to measure the length of longer distances. So remember, when measuring length, you either need to use a ruler, a metre stick, or maybe a tape measure. When we are measuring length, we need to think about which standard unit of measure is most appropriate to use. If we were measuring an extremely short length, like the length of a bug, we would use millimetres. But if we were going to measure the length of a lorry, we would probably use metres. Let's now look more closely at the different units of measure and compare their size. A millimetre is the smallest unit for measuring length, and there are 10 millimetres in 1 centimetre. So 10 millimetres is equivalent to 1 centimetre. And you can see that by looking very closely at this example. The millimetres are a very small unit of measure, and you need 10 millimetres to fit in just 1 centimetre. 5 millimetres are the same as half a centimetre. So on the mark between 0 and 1, the midpoint there is the equivalent to 5 millimetres or half a centimetre. And 100 centimetres are the same as 1 metre. So on a metre stick, which is 1 metre, you will see that 100 centimetres fits into 1 metre. I thought it would be useful to remind you of the process for measuring an object using a ruler. So how to measure with a ruler? When measuring with a ruler, it is extremely important to measure accurately. You must make sure you line up one end of your object to the very start of the measuring units on your ruler. The diagram shows you how to do this. You can see that one edge of the sharpener has been lined up to the 0 mark, and then the measurement is taken at the other edge. So according to this diagram, a sharpener measures 1 centimetre. Why not have a practice at measuring some objects before you complete the main activity? Now you know all you need to know to enable you to complete the length activity. In the next few slides, I'm going to provide you with a step-by-step guide to success. The first thing you need to do is choose your objects. So to get prepared to complete some activities based on length, you need to go on a scavenger hunt around your house to find 10 different sized objects. For example, you could find a shoe, a book, a box. You could even decide to include much longer objects like a cupboard or a table. You won't be able to pick these things up, but remember them for the next slide. The next thing you need to do is to draw your objects. Once you've decided on the 10 objects that you are going to use for this lesson from the curriculum board, you need to draw a simple shape to represent each object. Now, to make my explanation easier, I'm only going to use 5 objects. Just remember to apply the exact same skills to your group of 10 objects. So let's have a look at which objects I've chosen. So I've got a shoe, a table, a pencil, a girl, and a book. Your next step is to measure your objects. You need to use either a ruler or tape measure to accurately measure the length of each object using centimetres, and then write each length on a label for each of your objects. Remember to look back at the tips for measuring accurately if you need a prompt. Although my images are cartoon, I used real-life examples of these at home and measured them accurately. So let's have a look at the measurements I took for each of my objects. So my trainer measured 26 centimetres. My table measured 150 centimetres. My pencil measured 15 centimetres. My daughter measured 133 centimetres. And my book measured 30 centimetres. Now, quite clearly on each of the star labels, you can see that I've included the number, but I've also included the essential units of measure. Remember, you must write centimetres onto each of your lengths. Now you have all your measurements, you need to order the objects in ascending order. But what does this mean? Ascending order is where you need to position your objects from the shortest length to the longest length. And now I'm going to explain how to do this. So first, looking at all your lengths, identify which is the shortest. Now my pencil is the shortest at 15 centimetres. So I'm going to place it in first position on the left. Next, you need to find the longest length. Well, looking at my objects, I can see straight away that my table is longer and it's then the girl at 133 centimetres. So the table at 150 centimetres must be the longest object. So I'm going to place the table in last position on the right. You then need to look at your remaining measurements and complete the order. So looking at the 3 lengths I've got left, I've got a trainer at 26 centimetres, a book at 30 centimetres and a girl at 133 centimetres. So I've decided which one would take the middle position. And I know that the book is 30 centimetres. It must go in the middle because it is larger than the trainer at 26 centimetres, but it is smaller than the girl at 133 centimetres. I wonder where I should position the shoe. Is it bigger than the book at 30 centimetres? No, it's not. It is smaller than the book at 30 centimetres, but it is larger than the first object, which is the pencil, at 15 centimetres. So I'm going to place my trainer between the pencil and the book. And my final object is a girl measuring 133 centimetres. Now I know that she must take the position between the book and the table because 133 centimetres is longer than the book at 30 centimetres but shorter than the table at 150 centimetres. So I'm going to place the girl in between the two. So if we look right to the left in ascending order, my objects are the pencil, then the trainer, then the book, then the girl, and the table. Pause the video now and see if you can correctly put your objects in ascending order from the shortest length to the longest length. When you have finished ordering, just double check that your lengths are in ascending order from shortest to the longest, and then you are ready to begin your 3 questions. So let's have a look at question 1. What is the difference between the longest object and the shortest object? To work out the difference between 2 objects, you need to complete a subtraction calculation. You need to start with the largest value, which in my case is 150 centimetres, and take away the smallest value, which in my case is 15 centimetres. So I know from looking at my order that the table is the longest length at 150 centimetres and my pencil is the shortest length at 15 centimetres. So my calculation to work out the difference between the longest object and the shortest object is going to be 150 centimetres take away 15 centimetres. To solve this calculation, I'm going to use the partition method. And first of all, I'm going to split my 15 centimetres into tens and ones. So 15 centimetres is the same as 10 centimetres and 5 centimetres. So the first step I need to complete is 150 centimetres take away 10 centimetres, and that gives us the answer of 140 centimetres. Next, carry that 140 centimetres to your next calculation and you need to take away your 5 ones. So that is 140 centimetres take away 5 centimetres equals 135 centimetres. So my answer to the first calculation is 150 centimetres take away 15 centimetres equals 135 centimetres. So from my calculation, I know that the difference between my longest and shortest object is 135 centimetres. Now I have used the partition method to solve my calculation. However, there are other methods that you could use, like the number line, formal written method, or you could even use the bar model. You need to choose your favourite method to solve your calculation. If you decide to use the number line method, you should draw a line, write your longest length at the start of the line, and then do jumps until you have subtracted your shortest length. If you decide to use the formal written method, don't forget that you must line up each digit into the hundreds, tens and ones column, and it might be that you're going to need to use, because you're doing subtraction, you might need to remember to use exchange, where you exchange 1 10 for 10 ones. Now let's have a look at the next question. Question 2. Using the shortest object, how many of those objects do you think could fit approximately into the longest object? To work out this piece of information, you need to use the measurements again for your longest and shortest objects. My shortest object is the pencil, and I need to work out how many pencils, when laid in a row, would fit the whole length of my table. So again, my table is the longest length at 150 centimetres, and I need to work out how many pencils at 15 centimetres will fit the whole length of my table. Now looking at my lengths, I've spotted that my pencil is 10 times smaller than my table. So 15 centimetres is 10 times smaller than 150 centimetres. So using my knowledge of the 10 times table, or multiplying by 10, I can say that a pencil at 15 centimetres, if I times that by 10, so use 10 pencils, I will fit the whole length of the table at 150 centimetres. So I can fit 10 pencils into the length of my table. Now this was quite an easy calculation because I know that 15 multiplied by 10 will give you an exact length of 150 centimetres. You might need to use repeated addition to solve your calculation if your measurement for your shortest object will not fit exactly into the measurement for your longest object. So let's have a look at repeated addition. So you can see that I have added 15 centimetres repeatedly, and I've done it 10 times until I've reached 150 centimetres. Now, if my pencil was only 14 centimetres long, I would still be able to fit 10 pencils at 14 centimetres into my table, but that would only give me the length of 140 centimetres because 10 pencils that measure 14 centimetres will give you the length of 140 centimetres. Now I can't fit another 14 to 140 centimetres to be able to reach the length of 150 centimetres. So if my pencil only measured 14 centimetres, I would approximately fit 10 pencils at 14 centimetres into my longest length. So remember, you might not get an exact number, you might be looking more at an approximate number of your shortest length objects that would fit into your longest length object. Now let's have a look at the final question for your length activity. So question 3, add up the total length in centimetres of all your objects. To work out the total length of your objects, you will need to complete a series of addition calculations. You might find it easier to add the two largest items together first to find one total, then keep adding on one more length until you've reached your final total. You could use the formal written method instead, or even the number line method. So here you can see all of my lengths that I need to add together to find the total length in centimetres of all my objects. So first of all, I'm going to start by adding my two largest numbers together. And my two largest numbers are 150 centimetres and 133 centimetres. So 150 centimetres add 133 centimetres gives me my first total of 283 centimetres. Now to that total, I am going to add another length. So I'm going to add my 30 centimetres. So taking the total of the first two lengths together, 283 centimetres, add a further 30 centimetres equals 313 centimetres. Now I know that cannot be my total length because I've still got two lengths to add together. So I'm going to add another length onto my total, which is 26 centimetres. So 313 centimetres add 26 centimetres gives me a total of 339 centimetres. And next I just need to add on my final length, which is 15 centimetres. So 339 centimetres add 15 centimetres gives me a total length of 354 centimetres. So the answer to question 3 is the total length of all my objects is 354 centimetres. Now I have an extra challenge for you. Can you convert your total length into metres and centimetres? What you can do is go back to the start of the video and look at the slide on comparing units, and you can see from that slide that 1 metre is equivalent to 100 centimetres. Now in my total of 354 centimetres, I've got 300 centimetres. So I know that 300 centimetres is equivalent to 3 metres. And then I have the remainder of 54 centimetres. So 354 centimetres is exactly the same as 3 metres and 54 centimetres. Now, after all that explaining, it's your turn to have a go at answering the questions to the length activity. Remember, get busy with your amazing measuring skills. Make sure you are accurate and then use all your addition, subtraction, or maybe even some multiplication skills to find the answers to the problems on your length activity. Good luck, goodbye, and have fun.